Hello, everyone's Forest Focus, Nottingham Forest face an anxious wait on Elliot Anderson's injury after he limped out of last night's slightly mad friendly with Millwall with a worrying-looking injury. We'll discuss that news, the game in general, and some interesting transfer talk in the company of, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, good to have you with us. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Pleased to see that you're here and haven't yet been murdered by angry Millwall fans.
I made lots of friends last night. My mentions. I said to you on WhatsApp, I didn't know there were so many words you could put in front of the C word to abuse people with. But it was an eye-opening evening and lots of fun. I don't care about that stuff at all. But yeah, good fun all round. Michael Temple joining us, bailed me out at the last minute. How are you doing, Temps?
Well, I'm with the Millwall fans. I think you've gone a bit soft, Mike. You need to come and watch Hucknall Town play in the Sunday Prem and see some of the hacking that we have to endure. It did feel a bit like that, didn't it, from listening to those that have watched the game. But yeah, I probably enjoyed hearing some of the stuff you were called more than I should, but mainly because you're the exact opposite of all these horrific things that were being chucked at you by Angry Dave from Millwall.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I don't like to play up stereotypes, but they certainly did. And clicking on a few of their Twitter feeds, then they fit the bill of Millwall fans from what I imagine to be. So, yeah, hello, all the Millwall fans. Forest had a worry last night after Elliot Anderson hobbled off. Didn't look good at all. Looked like potential ligament damage. I don't think any media is out there apart from the club, but Danny Taylor has tweeted to say, in response to a fan, any Elliot Anderson news, Danny tweets, they think he's okay. I imagine he'll go for a scan to be sure, but medics all seem pretty optimistic. Obviously, Temps sounds very good on the face of it. Hope that's true. Have to wait and see how it settles down because, knees are very unpredictable things, but that would be a massive boost for Forest, wouldn't it?
Yeah, good. Elliot Anderson is waiting for a chance in the side and he needs to be resilient, patient and ready and raring. So injury, the last thing he needs when he's trying to displace the first name on the team sheet in Morgan Gibbs-White. But bodes well. I was hoping that would be the case. Danny will have good information, contact within the camp, I'm sure. So let's hope he was withdrawn as a precautionary measure. He can take full part in the rest of pre-season training and be available for the 17th of August. I think he starts on the bench. I think he's one of the players that's going to be first, second change. We've committed significant resource to getting him through the door. He's a player of high potential. I think he'll have a role to play in the season. I do see him starting as understudy to Morgan Gibbs-White and just really hoping that he comes through this minor setback.
I suppose the thing he offers, Pete, is versatility. We saw him play from the left last night, tucking in, playing close to Gibbs-White. So to have that option, and touch wood, he is fit. It gives Nuno different ways to pose problems to opposition, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I was keeping everything crossed that it just looked much worse than it was, and that's certainly a bit of a feeling of relief because, as Temp said, I don't think Danny would be tweeting that if he hadn't got it from a very good source. And I don't think the good source would be briefing if they weren't relatively confident that things were okay. So fingers crossed that's the case. It looked increasingly concerning last night watching it the longer he stayed down, and sort of he seemed genuinely quite sad on the pitch. He looked very down and of all the movements that they were testing and such like. So I was worried, but that would be a real relief and a real boost if he's okay. As you say, I think he can make a real impact for us in a number of areas on the pitch. It looks to me like he's hit the ground running. He seemed to combine with teammates really well. He's obviously on a similar level to lots of them. He was very much at the heart of some of that 1-2 touch stuff where they were interplaying really nicely. Coming off the left is obviously something that he can do and gives us a sort of alternative option to Hudson-Odoi that we just don't have otherwise. We certainly have struggled in terms of having somebody who can take the mantle from Gibbs-White if he's struggling a bit. So that's a brilliant option, and I see no reason why he couldn't compete as an 8 as well, particularly if you're playing 3 in there. So I think he's a real prospect for us this season in terms of the sort of impact that he could have. Temps is probably right that he may have to bide his time in terms of breaking into the team, but I think he's got all the attributes to do it. And it's pretty exciting, to be fair, when you think about the options that we have in those positions if they all stick around. Somebody mentioned to me just before we signed him that there's a sort of touch of the sort of young Ross Barkley about him, and I think that's really spot on, but hopefully without the slight sort of potential to be broken, I guess, which you've got a lot with young Ross Barkley. And he's got that sort of build where he's a bit of a bulldog, really. He's definitely physical. He looks like he likes just coming inside the pitch and getting shots off or linking things up. And just driving, roaming, looking for the ball. It just takes up such bright positions as well. He seems to be always finding himself in pockets of space and in between the lines. I just think he's exactly the sort of player that I want to see at the football club. Young, with everything to prove, bucketfuls of ability, and from the little I could glean so far, he seems to have a great mentality. So fingers crossed all is well with him. And if it is, then I think he can make a fairly big impact, and probably quite quickly.
That news broke right at the back end of the recording, so you probably just witnessed some undoubtedly seamless editing from me as you listen to this. Would kick us off, Pete, because me and you watched the game in full. What did you make of it in general? And I said about the word snowflake. I hate it, but am I too much of a snowflake for thinking that it was way over the top from them?
No, I don't think so. General thoughts. I mean, I nearly died of shock at several points during the first half. Having witnessed some of the games pre-season in the last couple of years, I didn't know that such heights of footballing fluidity were actually possible. Particularly during that first half, thought we looked like a really serious attacking proposition. Controlled proceedings pretty well, winning the ball quickly and putting together really sharp, sweeping moves. Lots of players involved, sort of 1-2 touch stuff. Plenty to really enjoy there. I probably didn't get quite as mad as you did about some of the Millwall behaviour, but certainly it was. I think I'm with Nuno in thinking it was definitely aggressive and sometimes excessive. And I had a couple of tackles that probably put our lads at risk as well, which is not great and a bit odd for a pre-season game where you're essentially doing each other a bit of a favour and getting some competitive-ish minutes, and particularly given we're not even at the properly competitive bit of pre-season yet as well. So I thought that was not great on their part, and I shouldn't think we'll be playing them again anytime soon pre-season.
No, I agree. It was the putting our players at risk thing that wound me up. I mean, it was entirely pointless doing that. Pete referenced Nuno there, speaking to the club afterwards. He was quite political, his answer. Aggressive, that's part of the game, but it was sometimes excessive, was how Nuno saw it. But I think he seemed like he was raging on the touchline.
Nuno's right, and jokes aside, you don't need that in pre-season friendlies. It is about fitness and patterns of play, rather than proving that you're the baddest man in the championship, which some of those boys clearly wanted to do. So no, I don't think we will play them again. And it's probably borne out a bit of frustration, because certainly from the goals I've seen and the knockdown from Dominguez for Wood to finish, there was a period of possession before that which would have frustrated Millwall, because they couldn't lay a glove on us. And I do like the fact that we're going into these games with more recognisable 11s, some experimentation and rotation, of course, but there isn't a lot of chaff hanging around at Forest anymore. You look at some of the lineups in previous pre-seasons, and we were giving minutes in expectation of 5, 6, 7, 8 more players come through the door. There seems to be more of a spine there. There seems to be a familiarity and a comfort. And a couple of the goals that we've scored so far shows that understanding and chemistry that's developing between our players. I think that bodes really well.
Interesting, as Pete referenced there about the style of play, the way we went about the first half. On Monday, we discussed formations and if we were seeing a possible lineup. We went about it slightly differently. This was our team in the first half. I'll just read through it for people who are listening. This isn't, sorry, I've just whacked a keyboard, very clumsy. This isn't exactly our team. It's sort of a hybrid, but this was mostly who played. So it was Turner in goal, but I put Sells on here. And I still think it'll be Miguel at the start of the season. I just hope that the people I lift this graphic from put his face in the database. Then the back four, who I think will be in the Premier League, is Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo, and Aina. But the midfield three was what I wanted to talk about. We had Sangare anchoring midfield, Danilo playing as pretty much an 8, kind of drifting left. Dominguez pushed out to the right and provided a fair bit of width. But as the half went on, he kind of tucked in, floated inside, and we passed the ball very fluidly, with Pete reference. Gibbs White playing very central, really, and Anderson on the left, but tucking in and going beyond Chris Wood when he could. Do you like that team, Temps? I'll ask Pete about it as well. Do you like that as a notion of getting those three midfielders into the team? Again, Alanga's probably the one that misses out there, though.
Yeah, I'd like to find a way for Elanga and Hudson-Odoi to play when it suits. But dare I say, Sangare is starting to show flashes. He's going to come good. I read back on the malaria comment and him suffering for a period of time last year, and that taking the wind out of his sails and never really been able to get back to full fitness. But dare I say, it kind of looks like we are pinning some hope on him, and he's rising to that billing and seems to be one of the first names on the team sheet when we're putting stronger sides out in pre-season. I think there's a dynamism there. You've got players that Graf put the work in, are defensively sound but progressive on the ball as well. Higher ceiling, as you mentioned before, Matt, and I really hope he starts the season in the team, because it's a sign that those within Forest assess his form to be sufficient to be a regular Premier League starter. We know what he can be, hasn't shown it for Forest yet. Really hope he can deliver. Elanga's going to be very, very unlucky if we decide not to play with two out-and-out wingers. I don't see Nico Dominguez as being an automatic starter, far from it. I can see a situation where that back four starts the campaign. I think you're right about the keeper. Chris Wood will be ahead of Taiwo come the start of the season. He'll be sharper, having not missed the period that Taiwo's missed. There's a strong chance that he could start up top. With White inked in at number 10. So from the names you've got there, I just wonder if Dominguez comes out, we play the two wingers, we flip the keeper, and that's the guy that takes the ball on the 17th.
Yeah, I think Hudson-Odoi is pretty nailed. I think he's come back looking sharp, and I'm sure he'll play on the left. But a variation of that team looks interesting, Pete. What do you make of it? And I suppose the other point is we've got different options now. We could go to an away game and play something like that, or play in a home game, be more front foot, play a back three. It's good to have options, but specifically on that shape, Pete, having seen last night.
Yeah, I like the shape. I mean, I think it was quite fluid as well, because there were definitely times in the game where it looked more like a sort of 4-2-3-1 in a slightly more traditional sense, with Dominguez floating slightly higher up on the right and pressing. I mean, Dominguez, you could see he covered so much ground. He was probably playing at left back at little periods of the game where he just he was all over the place. So it certainly had a real fluidity to it, and there were plenty of sort of passages of the game where Sangare and Danilo were probably more of a sort of traditional double pivot, with Danilo picking the passes and Sangare winning the ball. I mean, it works in a lot of ways for me. I mean, I know that there's been call from some quarters for that three at the back system, and I clearly Nuno's had his he's used it a couple of times in pre-season already, and went back to it in the second half. For me, this is the sort of lineup that I'd be looking at, because as I see it, our strength in terms of depth options and players to come in are really in those sort of central midfield and wide areas, and it's already difficult enough getting those players in the team and finding the right blend, let alone sort of adding another centre half to the picture. So for me, that's more or less the sort of system and structure we should be using. As you say, it's fluid, and you can go in there with two wingers, you can go in there with two sort of more narrow number 10 types. You can really mix it, and I mean, Gibbs White's more than capable of dropping and playing as one of those 2/8s as well, and that gives you another alternative option. So that's certainly how I'd be looking to go. I mean, Temps mentioned Dominguez. I mean, I thought he was probably the star player on the night, and perhaps a little bit of confirmation bias, because I've always been a big fan of his. But I would really like to see if there is a way of getting him into the team slightly more regularly and seeing what he can contribute in a more settled, more cohesive environment. Because for me, he seems to lift the players around him with his work off the ball. His pressing is absolutely first class, and when he's on the ball, he's got quick feet. He seems to be on the sort of footballing level of all of his teammates around him, regardless of how they sort of see the pictures. With the goal, you see that run in behind, ghosting in behind for the great ball from Gibbs White, and then to just cushion it down so nicely for Chris Wood speaks for his footballing intelligence in a couple of different ways there. And it just seemed that he was so often one of those players just playing the one or two touch passes that linked others together in that first half. And I really think that there's a player that could provide huge benefit to the football club in Dominguez. So I hope to see him really competing for a role. But as I say, I mean, part of the reason why I think we should play four at the back is because I think there are really good quality options in central midfield. And being able to have a blend of three of them in there probably mitigates for the fact that we don't have a really, really obvious out-and-out destroyer. I think they've all got mixed skills, but perhaps none of them are sort of really pigeonholed as an obvious this or that, and they can all do lots of parts of the game. And I think having a blend of three might give us an opportunity to find a good fit there where they can thrive, and they certainly did that in, clearly pre-season friendly. Millwall didn't look like a great team at all. I get all that stuff, but there was something happening between the players there. There was a sort of alchemy that looked really promising. And it's, as I said, it's a far cry from anything I've seen during pre-season in recent years. So there's definitely something to build on there.
I think Dominguez was definitely the most interesting player in the first half to watch because, like Pete said, he covers so much ground. We forget as well, or I forget, like he finished last season injured, and I think he might have played injured for quite a while, which is maybe why Nuno didn't pick him as much. So he's not the forgotten man. But obviously, we've focused so much on Sangare. Just quickly before I go back to Temps, Pete, where does Yates fit into the picture? Because I know you're one of his number one fans, certainly a member of the club. Where's Yatesy fit into this group?
Yeah, well, it's not unreasonable to have two opinions. One being that Ryan Yates is a real asset to this football club and a player who can have a genuine impact over the coming season and has already had an impact in 2 Premier League seasons. But also to think that he is down the pecking order when it comes to some of those players. I mean, as things start at the start of the season, I think that's where we are. I think there will be games where you probably feel like you really want a Ryan Yates in there just to add some energy, add some intensity, perhaps take the game to the opposition off the ball. And I think he'll be really useful in those games. There will definitely be times when we want him in the team, whether that's through just team choice, team selection, or because of unavailability of other players and such like. So for me, he's a really valuable part of the squad still, but I don't think it's unfair to say that those three, or even more central midfielders on the screen now, are a level above him as footballers in many aspects of the game, and they're probably, all things considered, going to be higher up the pecking order because we're looking to start this season in a positive fashion, where Ryan Yates has often come to the fore because we've been just struggling so massively that you desperately need characters and players like him to come in, bind things together, and drag you through games. And I think our ambitions are going to be slightly higher now to try and take games to the opposition and try and dominate in a way that we haven't been able to in previous seasons. And perhaps that doesn't suit Yatesy quite so much, but I still think he's got a real significant part to play. Players get injured, players aren't available, and also the opposition's different, and you do have to adapt to that still. I think there's a definite role for him, and as you say, I'm one of his biggest fans. I would never ever count against Yatesy forcing his way into a football team just through sheer force of personality and the way that he carries himself and goes about his business on and off the pitch. So I wouldn't be drawing a line under Yates' involvement at Forest anytime soon.
Quick Ryan Yates related quiz for each of you. Yesterday, Mark was saying about how he was the most foul player at the club. And I looked on the Premier League statistics and he committed the third most fouls out of the entire Premier League last season. 54 fouls committed, 57 fouls won. Who committed the most fouls in the Premier League, would you say? I'll give you a guess each, starting with Temps.
It's got to be a centre-half. I'm probably having someone like...
It's a central midfielder, actually.
Central midfielder. Conor Gallagher.
Pete, what would your guess be?
I was going to say the same thing.
Really? I'm surprised. Yeah. You're both right. I'm surprised by that. He committed 83 fouls. Yeah. So he was 20
Matt. Don't test us, pal. We'll just come flying through with a plot.
I was toying with John McGinn because I'm pretty sure every time I see him play, he's just running into people left, right, and centre. But yeah,
no.
I think the point with Yatesy is he'd be horrible to play against, and that's what must impress countless managers in training. I remember hearing an anecdote, true or not, about Carvalho doing 25 Cruyff turns, then Yatesy coming and cleaning him out in front of Roy Keane and getting the nod off the back of that. And he has, hasn't he? He's not in everyone's pre-season 11, but through commitment, running, fitness, adaptation to a game plan, and all the facets Pete described before, he finds a way. And this won't be the first time he's been overlooked. It won't be the first time he's out of the side. but he will just relentlessly push to get back in that side. When he does, he'll kill time, he'll fall on the ball, he'll use his yellow card wisely. He almost prides himself, doesn't he, on being as close to the bone as he can with these niggly little fouls. And that's quite a stat, that he both fouls and is fouled. And it's of no surprise to anyone that's watched him play as often as us three have.
Conor Gallagher, 83 fouls. Second, 66. Care to have a guess? Another central midfielder, defensive midfielder?
Go on, Pete. You give me the answer this time.
It's not. I'm presuming it's not McGinn.
No, but he plays in the Midlands. I'll tell you. It was João Gomez was second.
Oh, really?
And then there's 3 players on third. Yatesy. And then 2 wingers. Interestingly, play for top 6 clubs. Anyone want to have a quick guess before we move on?
Anthony?
No, good guess. That was a good guess. One of them I think I would have got in Luis Diaz, because he's always committing niggly fouls. The other one's Kulusevski, who feels like a bit of a surprise, because apart from him cutting in and shooting every single time he gets the ball, I don't really notice him doing much else. So, there you go. Interesting.
Running really fast in straight lines.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I think Brennan's better than him, but he's a decent player. Right, back to business. The other interesting point in discussion, that's sort of emerging, Temps, is the form of young Moreira at right back. Very good again. Nico didn't struggle, but he got caught out for the goal. He got caught out a bit in the other game. He's probably not been at his best. To me, he's got so much credit in the bank. I think he won Premier Player of the Month for the club about 3 months in a row. But a few people messaging and saying, well, actually, I think, is Moreira pushing him? We discussed it a bit last night. Is it still a way to go, or is Moreira a viable option?
When we signed him, I didn't think he was a player for now. I think £1.5 million from St. Pauli. I thought that was one for the bank, maybe a future trade, maybe in that B column that gets loaned out for a couple of years and then disappears for £7-8 million. And it's a financial fair play trade, if you like. But I love the fact that he's played his way in. I thought these highlights at Chesterfield were really strong. I've seen the scouting video there where he was very secure with the ball. Had real intent, could have scored, got a couple of shots off on goal and overlapped really well. So I think he profiles pretty similar to Nico, having seen him as an attacking fullback that likes to get past his winger, likes to give opposing fullback something to think about, but is also defensively sound and positionally aware. I don't think he's pressing Nico. I think he's a bit too young, but if he could force his way into being a squad player and be retained, not loaned out this season, I think that would represent success for him. But I don't expect him to be anyone other than Nico Williams at right back for the first game of the season.
You're a big Nico advocate as well, Pete. Moreira, though, he did show good maturity and defensive solidity. His first 2 positive contributions of the game were defensive, but I don't know, do you feel like Temp says, get a good season out of him as in the Carabao Cup, being a good squad player? And it's Nico's shirt to lose still, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, as you say, I'm probably president of the Nico Williams fan club. But this is ultimately based. It's a meritocracy, isn't it? In the club, that's what you hope it's going to be. If Moreira confounds people in the way that he's already confounded me and Temps and others by actually appearing to be a sort of really realistic, viable first team squad player rather than someone that you're not going to see for a couple of years, who knows? I mean, I'd be the first to be thrilled and excited if he's breaking into our first team and having an impact. But I mean, I think you're probably not going to be casting Nico aside based on a couple of good pre-season performances. So I think he'll have a way to go. And even if he does sort of prove to be that sort of quality of player, he's probably not going to be one who's playing every single game. He's very young and has really not played very much football at a sort of high standard at all, which is one of the reasons why I thought that this would be a sort of a long-term project, I guess. But as you say, you're totally right to pick up on it. He's been fantastic. I think the biggest thing in his favour is that you just wouldn't look at him during a game as we did yesterday and think, oh, here's some teenage player who's just not played much football and is in need of a lot of physical and tactical development. He just looks like someone who's ready to slot in and is comfortable with the players around him. So fantastic to see. I mean, what a coup from the football club to pick someone out of, I mean, he clearly had talent and was recognised as being a sort of talented player in the age groups, but as I say, hadn't been sort of progressed through club football into high level football quickly at all. So yeah, I mean, it's just exciting, and it's great to see. It's great to see the club doing this. I mean, I guess it's got George Sirianos' fingerprints all over it, and the longer we can continue with someone like him finding players like that and bringing them to the club for small fees, the better, because that's just going to set us up for a bright future, hopefully.
Pierre, I don't want this to be a comparison, but we didn't speak about Murillo once in pre-season, did we? He turned up without reputation, and it was through training sessions and showing his power in defending against the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White that he forced his way into the side. Was a surprise inclusion in the starting 11 and stayed there. So yeah, love the idea of that happening again.
Let's give a word of gratitude to the Trent Navigation for their support as ever. Match day is not far away. First game 17th of August, so 3 weeks or so to go. Get down to Nav pre-match with Fothers to enjoy all the build-up, and then you can head back post-match, obviously, after we've won the first game. And then we've got another home game against Wolves a couple of weeks after. So the best football pub in Nottingham. So do show them your support as much as they've shown theirs to us. Right, second half of the show, some interesting transfer chat to go through. The main rumour today is around Ramon Sosa, a 24-year-old winger who's come up on the radar, played in for Paraguay in the Copa America. Thanks again to WT Analysis for doing half the job for me and making this look really good. People can see his stats on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. This is in the Argentine Premier League. He plays for Talleres. He's 24, if I hadn't said that already. He looks like he plays mostly on the left. Very direct, loves a shot, sort of a Hudson-Odoi type player, basically. So you can see he marks up just basically well for everything in that league. Very high for expected assists. Crossing is good, and goal involvement is very good. Dribbling is excellent. So basically, he looks like a promising player. A reported release clause of around 15 million or so. And interestingly, Nathan Joyce, who's been on the show from the Copper Club, had this to say about him after he was linked with Chelsea and Wolves in this window. What I will say, this is on Twitter, by the way, sorry. What I will say is Forest are clear in what they want. Once again, they've identified a winger that can not only drive them up the pitch, but chip in with goals and assists. Thrives in transitions, technically gifted, good in tight areas. Perhaps overlooked by many due to being 24. He was on my one-to-one list at Copa America and stated the move to Europe had to be this summer. Looks capable of Europa League standard. His sole goal at Copa wasn't too bad either. That was a Hudson-Odoi-esque goal where he whipped it in from the edge of the box on his right foot. Any initial thoughts on him there, Pete? I don't know if we've all seen the YouTube highlights at best, but it's probably the thing that interests me is what I will say is Forest are clear in what they want. It's what I like about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we always have to preface this sort of chat with it's YouTube, but yeah, looking at that sort of highlights package, I mean, I think he has a slightly different profile to Hudson-Odoi in that he looks like he's sort of very willing to engage the fullback and get right to the byline and sort of slip in between defenders, whereas Hudson-Odoi tends to make that move quite quickly, where he comes inside and gets that sort of curling shot off. So he might offer a slightly more direct, slightly different threat, and I mean, it looks like he's obviously got skills, as you've seen from those stats that you've put up. I mean, he's got certainly his drop of the shoulder seems to fool defenders in that league. I also like that he looks from the highlights to be quite athletic and strong too, which I suppose is something that might be a query coming from a different league abroad into the Premier League. So yeah, I mean, all of it looks promising to me. Clearly caveated with the fact that I've never seen him play before and I don't think I've ever heard of him before today, or yesterday rather. So pretty strong caveats, I guess. I mean, the thing I really welcome overall is that I love us being the team that takes this chance. I really feel strongly that that's where we need to be as often as we can when we're recruiting. I don't think we can be we can, but I don't think we should generally be the club trying to take a player like this after he's had a European move. Obviously much more expensive. And then, the alternatives are recruiting players that teams don't want for whatever reason at our sort of level or elsewhere. And this is exactly where we should be, taking players who are young-ish in this case, obviously a bit further along than some of recent signings like Murillo or otherwise, but youngish talent, giving them their shot and just helping them to explode before you reap the benefits of that performance, whether it's at our club or in a sale elsewhere. And if we can do that more often, as we've already managed to do in a couple of cases, I think we're building a way of doing things and a reputation that becomes a positive cycle for the football club. Players see what you can do for them. It gives you more kudos as an option. And we're therefore going to be sort of rising the ranks of clubs where players want to go and have those achievements. And you never know, further along the line as we develop, we might be able to hang on to those players for a little bit longer, enjoy them for a little bit longer, and then slowly be able to really maximise what we get for them when they move on. I think that's what the very best football clubs of our sort of size are able to do. And it's a really, really hard game. It's very easy to talk like it's something that we should all just be doing. It's very, very hard. You need incredibly talented staff recruiting and also then working with footballers and have a stable environment that they want to come and thrive in. But if we can keep making steps towards that, then I just think it's tremendously exciting. It's exactly where we should be. And as I've said on the podcast a few times, I think it's fair to say that the club staff who are doing this work have earned trust in this market. They clearly know what they're doing in South America, and if he ends up coming to the football club, I'll be very positive and very hopeful, while also trying not to put too much expectation on the lad. But he'd be coming to a club at the moment where we've got two wingers already looking like they can do real damage at this level. Another player in Anderson who hopefully, if he's fit, can play out there as well, and there wouldn't be sort of instant demand on him. So fingers crossed we can keep the squad we've got, add players like him, and that gives you a sort of good cocktail of being able to develop and thrive.
I don't think it's one that's like on the horizon going to happen straight away, Temps, or anything like that, but it's interesting. I just like the profile of the player. The fact he's 24 is interesting because you think, well, maybe someone should have picked him up, but also he comes with a bit more experience. What do you think about it? You're muted. Why are you muted, Temps?
Struggling to compare the level. Sorry, mate, my fault. That with what he's done in the Argentine Premier League, where he is breaking ankles and leaving fullbacks in the dust. You always concern yourself with, but can you do that against Trent Alexander-Arnold? It's a very, very different level in the Premier League. What I like, as you said, is that profile. The fact that we do need an out-and-out winger who can ideally back up both Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, which it's clear that he can do. Looks like a very unselfish player. I think his vision, heads up in the penalty box, is outstanding. There's several clips of him laying on tap-ins when some might try to finish themselves. So there are credible elements, but pulling a Paraguayan out of the Argentine league sounds fraught with risk to me. Beyond his skills as a footballer, can he settle? Can he hit the ground running? Can he join midway through a pre-season, skip the Mercy a bit, and come and do it on the banks of the Trent? So, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm attaching too much credence to this one. I know we've got to discuss every rumour, and it's an interesting conversation around the qualities they bring and where they might fit in. Would definitely welcome the recruitment of a winger. I'm not necessarily convinced yet that this is the guy for us.
So staying on that theme then, we were linked with Reiss Nelson earlier in the window, and that was the one that grabbed your attention, Temps. Fabrizio Romano tweeting today that Leicester are trying to get him on loan, and he's retweeted it, which on the incremental bar of Fabrizio Romano leading up to a transfer is one of the many, many, many steps. So maybe that one will happen. Should we be trying to jump in there and get him before them?
Yeah, I think Reiss Nelson's high potential, and in a smaller club where he's going to have more profile and a chance to prove himself, he could be the one. I've said before, I think we'll be tested with bids for Callum Hudson-Odoi. He's passed whatever test he was setting himself last season with his quality, his ability to fit into a relatively struggling side and make an impact. So Reiss Nelson appeals because he's familiar with the way of British football. He knows the level, knows the standard, easier to settle. I would welcome him infinitely more than someone with parachuting out of Paraguay via Argentina. I just think that he's the kind of player like Hudson-Odoi that's shown flashes, needs a chance to be playing relatively consistently and could find a good home at Forest. I think if Leicester do pull off that bit of business, it's really, really sound.
I guess it's finances, isn't it? 15 million and 40 grand a week for a Paraguayan winger, or 100 grand a week for Nelson plus 25 million at the end of the season is probably the conundrum. I guess we don't have an infinite amount of money, which kind of leads us, Pete, into the other player I was going to mention, in James Rodriguez. There's a report by Graham Bailey, who's another one of the transfer journalists, saying that Rodriguez has been offered to a load of Premier League clubs. I think Wolves, Villa, Fulham were on the list with us. He's got that sort of link because he played for Olympiacos. So there's the Marinakis in there. Obviously, being a world-class player, and he's coming off the back of a really good Copa America, I think, a legend for his country. Is it one where you think, class is permanent? We saw Navas come in and do really well in goal for us. Or does it scream Jesse Lingard, Origi Mark II for you?
I think you can probably guess what my answer to this is. I don't want to pigeonhole it into like one of those things where it has to be a failure in the same way as someone else, but it'd be a flat out no for me. I'm also not desperately concerned about it at this moment in time, because from the outside it looks like things are being run in a recruitment sense in quite a sort of solid strategic manner at the moment. But if this is the sort of link that crops up on deadline day and things are a little bit more panicked at the City Ground, then I might get a bit more concerned. I mean, on him as a player, I mean, it feels like a pretty obvious no to me. We've already got talent in the position that he's best occupying, whether that's sort of in a sort of number 10 where you give him a bit of leeway, or whether he's playing out wide right and coming inside. We've got players that I'd rather be in the team there. I'm not convinced that he's massively going to buy into the sort of work ethic that I think we desperately need as a side. If you look at his recent career, since flattering to deceive at Everton, albeit having a bit of a strong start to the season, if I remember correctly, and looking pretty good on Match of the Day, he's just been hopping around the world with his contract getting mutually terminated all over the place, and it's just not the sort of signing I want us to be getting in on, to be honest. It would strike me as being absolutely opposite to the good work that we've generally been doing in the market. Signing someone on exorbitant wages with massive potential to disrupt things in a position we don't really need them for. What? Just the name, sort of branding side of things. I'm really not sure what the benefits to it would be. I mean, the other thing I'd say is that you only have to stick his name into Google to see that he's linked with about 4,000 football clubs in the last month or so. I suspect his agents are pretty busy trying to find that next signing on fee.
Yeah, I'm not getting concerned or excited about it. I think it's a lot of agent talk at work. The other clubs' temps were Villa, Wolves, Fulham and Brighton are the ones mentioned in this report, along with Sevilla and Como, the Serie A side, who signed Rafael Varane and under Cesc Fabregas. He's 33, obviously had a great career. I mean, if Elliot Anderson's injured, I wouldn't necessarily want us to panic and go out for the big name because it doesn't feel like the right move to me. What do you think?
It's got to be done with numbers. You've got to disregard the name. You can't have this structure and then blow it open because someone was good once. Now I'm remembering his goals for Colombia in World Cups in years gone by. There's an absolute highlights package around him. But if the numbers don't stack up and this is just a romantic thing to get a South American name on the back of a shirt, steer clear. I think you're better off having a system and feeding every thought, every transfer process through that, rather than having the ability to just break rank and grab something if it kind of feels like it might spark into what he was at his peak. I don't think it is at his peak. I still think he's got something to offer. I just rather we went down this structured route rather than legend on the turn kind of territory, which I fear this may become.
I will just say, just having a quick look at the Copa America, 6 assists in the tournament, by far the greatest provider, and 1 goal. So he's obviously still got it, and I'm not like denigrating the guy, but whether he has got it in the Premier League to do it, 30 games a year, I'm not sure. I don't think it'll happen, but it's an interesting discussion, as we have gone down that route previously with Jesse Lingard and Divock Origi. And he's got a better CV than both of them, I'm sure. 65 million quid, I think Real Madrid signed him for. So one to monitor. Another one from Graham Bailey is Sheffield United potentially loaning Josh Bowler, which sounds a lot more feasible. I think he's got a year left on his contract. So we'll probably move on to any of the business shortly. Anything you want to add, Pete, around... well, I was going to say Trevor Chalobah was the other player on the list, if he would be of interest to you, or just any other transfer stuff in general.
I mean, Chalobah's obviously a very good player and someone that would be lovely to have at the football club. But I think you can file his under the same issues that we've been talking about in terms of finance. I don't see us spending 30 odd million pounds on any footballer this window unless we've had significant outgoings. And certainly I don't think we could afford to do that on one that we probably don't actually need above other positions. If we were going to play three at the back, he'd be absolutely fantastic. If we play two centre halves and Murillo doesn't leave, then we've already got two really good ones, and Chalobah may well break into that, but I don't think we can really afford to be spending the sort of money that we're talking about. Again, wages would be absolutely massive. Great player, great prospect in terms of what he might be able to be in the future if he plays regular football for a number of seasons. Adds a huge amount to any team, I think, particularly in terms of how comfortable he is on the ball and what he can bring to sort of starting attacks and such like. But I just think we've been in this position in the Premier League now. This is our third season. We've already had to learn a lesson from what happens if you buy players on massive wages and spend an awful lot of money on them. You end up paying for your mistakes later down the line. We saw that in January with all the mess around PSR coming to haunt us and sort of looming over us for the rest of the season. We saw how difficult it is in June, albeit the club did incredibly well to hopefully get us over the line, as we suspect, without losing anything from the very first 11. But we are just going to create problems for ourselves if we sign players on six-figure salaries with lots of money going out on their fee as well. And for me, that's probably a reason why Nelson might not be achievable for us. Profile's great, and I love the idea of us being a football club who gives someone like him the chance to become what they can be, which is what we've been in Callum Hudson-Odoi's case, I think. But the difference is that when you're recruiting someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi, and I think perhaps this case applies to the chap in Argentina as well, is that I think Forest really are in a position where we can sign players of that sort of potential talent if they've got a flaw in their overall profile that makes them less desirable to other football clubs. In the case of the guy from Argentina, he's at an age now where you'd expect him to have already made that move, and therefore clubs will be asking themselves why he's not really done so. In the case of Hudson-Odoi, he's obviously got a massive injury history, and it's a risk taking on a player who has a very healthy wage and may not play much football for you. I think that's the market Forest are operating in, and it's about taking the right risks and the gamble being right and doing your due diligence and all that sort of stuff. And it's probably also about a fair bit of luck as well. But I think that's probably where we are, and I'm unconvinced that we're going to really be able to sign players for multiple millions on six-figure salary contracts without paying for it at a later date, because the financial rules aren't going anywhere. And our income isn't really going anywhere either without selling players and developing them.
Thanks very much to our second sponsors this episode, Home Move Estate Agents by Ben Sales. I noticed the other day when I was seeing how many people generously donated to Laura Mitchell's charity fundraising that Ben was in there giving money to Laura. So big Forest fan, good bloke, well worth your support. If you're looking to buy or sell in the area, and obviously he's very good at his job, as the reviews show through Google, a 5-star rating. So thanks to Home Move Estate Agents and Ben Sales for their support. Right. Do us a favour, if you haven't already, hit like on the video. Makes a big difference. Do subscribe, become a channel member, and leave us a lovely review on iTunes if you would. Thank you very much. Michael Temple, any other business before we go?
Well, just in support of the club, I think it'd be great to get a crowd down for the Villarreal game on Friday night. I know tickets on general sale now to those who've got an account with the club. So yeah, get down there, have a first glimpse at the side for this season. If you haven't been there already, it'll be my first chance to watch them live in the flesh, and I hope we can deal with Villarreal. So yeah, talking's almost over. Time for the football to become front and centre once more, and hopefully see some folk down there Friday night.
They're meant to be on sale. I saw some stuff on Twitter saying that there was problems with technologically wise. So yeah, I'm sure it will be sorted in good time before that game. Anything from you, Pete, before we depart?
No, nothing from me. I'm just very much looking forward to getting stuck in now. Had a nice day at the test last week and watching the game last night. The friendly got my sort of whistle wetted a bit. So yeah, just ready to get stuck in now. Looking forward to seeing all the mates for a few beers and then hopefully roaring the lads onto a couple of early season victories.
Didn't fall asleep in your front garden after the test, did you?
No, I didn't. I was actually relatively well behaved. Although I did get a few texts off Mikey, who was there for the second day in a row, and I'm not convinced that he was well behaved because, I mean, a bit of a zombie vibe about him, I'd say.
He certainly had some staying power because he was at the cricket event at the NAV post play, having done a full day at it. So I think he can handle it a bit better than Greg Mitchell can. So yeah, maybe that's one. We're never gonna top this fantasy Premier League table, but maybe for staying power and behaviour after 12 hours on the Madry. I'm not sure who's top, but we can put Greg Mitchell firmly at the bottom.
Fantasy Premier League code is lowercase e6, lowercase oyv1. So do sign up for that. Good tip by Tams. The other thing I was just going to add quickly, shout out to listener Joe Horn. September the 1st this year, he is running the big half marathon for Free Kicks Foundation. I think that's in London. He says Free Kicks Foundation, a fantastic local charity who offer the chance for disadvantaged children and young people to have memorable days out at their favourite football clubs, allowing to attend matches and meet the players, opportunities they would never usually have. So a very good cause. I'll drop the link in the description to support Joe. Like I said, lots of people did that for Laura. Thanks for everyone's company today. We are back on Friday night post-match after the Elche game. Not sure who with, but do join us for that if you can. Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. See you soon.
Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure.
As always, people won't know how seamless this recording has been, but very grateful to the chaps. Have a good day, everyone. If we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.